Tonight, an orchestra born in the USA. There ain't no mountain high enough in Strauss's Alpine Symphony. Those summer nights, the mezzo-soprano Joyce DiDonato sings Berlioz. Welcome to the BBC Proms. Hello from the Royal Albert Hall's gallery, filling up with savvy prommers who have bagged, frankly, a bit of a bargain. £6 to hear one of the world's greatest young orchestras, the National Youth Orchestra of the USA, conducted tonight by Sir Antonio Pappano, and they're performing for us music by Hector Berlioz, Richard Strauss, and Benjamin Beckman. He's one of the orchestra's two apprentice composers. Welcome to the Proms.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to hear your piece, Occidentalis.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about it, a sort of user's guide. Where did the title come from?
So Occidentalis is Latin for of the West, and I've been taking Latin for 8 years, all through school back in America.
You're about to go and do
college.
Music and classics at Yale.
Yes, indeed.
So this brings everything together.
All together. And so when I was thinking about what to write for our NYO's European tour, I thought about how we're playing all European music, and my piece and my fellow apprentice Tyson's piece are the American pieces on the program. And so I wanted to write something that was about America in some large general sense. And so West has such a foundational role in American movement and psychology, this idea of either coming west from Europe to America or going west in America on the frontier to find a better life elsewhere is kind of the centerpiece. The emotional aspects of that, the anxiety of leaving home and also the pursuit of something new, the joy of possibility is kind of what I was thinking a lot about in this piece, especially connected to my ancestors coming to America from Europe and also with me leaving home for college next year.
So tell me about these found objects. You've got 5 of them you've included in this piece, and they're kind of a mix of the serious and the quite fun.
So in the middle of the piece, there's a little bit of a very sparkly section with some winds and string soloists, and these 5 found objects, which are a wood block, a flower pot, a Cambodian gong,
as you do a flower pot, yeah,
a brass plate, and a steel bowl. And so the percussionist is just going wild on these crazy instruments that you would never really think were instruments.
It's a 3.5-minute kind of orchestral showcase. I really enjoyed hearing it in rehearsals. Really looking forward to hearing it this evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being with us. Enjoy the concert. Well, tonight is the second ever performance of this piece, Occidentalis. It's its European premiere. And as Benjamin said, so many things inside this. There's those 5 found objects, but he's also got a huge percussion section and a harp and piano. So it's a real feast, both for the eyes and the ears. And here comes Sir Antonio Pappano now to conduct the National Youth Orchestra of the USA, opening their concert here at the Proms with the European premiere of 18-year-old Benjamin Beckman's Occidentalis. The second performance ever of Benjamin Beckman's Occidentalis, performed by the National Youth Orchestra of the USA, conducted by Sir Antonio Pappano. He is really something, this kid. 18-year-old Benjamin Beckman, accomplished brass player, brilliant at classical languages, already a very well-established composer in his native America, and about to start doing a music and languages degree at Yale. That sparkling piece, a teenager's snapshot of American life. Well, next we're going to hear music by anniversary composer Hector Berlioz, born 150 years ago this year. His sinuous and sultry collection of songs, Les Nuits d'été, Summer Nights. The words written by Berlioz's friend and neighbour, the poet Théophile Gautier. The songs portray a sort of love affair, really, starting with innocence and travelling through to profound loss. Those emotions were certainly well known to Berlioz. When he was writing Les Nuits d'été, his marriage was going downhill, and he was having an affair with a mezzo-soprano by the name of Marie Recio. That wasn't going too well either. He called her a bossy shrew who sang like a cat. Charming. Apparently she was not that great a singer, Marie. She only lasted one season at the Paris Opera. Fortunately tonight we have the mezzo-soprano Joyce DiDonato singing for us. We caught up with her earlier.
Les Nuits d'été of Berlioz is composed of 6 pieces of music, incredibly evocative, romantic, full of nostalgia, melancholy, love and loss. They're divine. It's the French style, and so you need drama, but refinement and delicacy. Each of these pieces is quite episodic. They have their own universe. The first one is quite fresh, and it's about springtime and rabbits and strawberries. And the second, they have to create this atmosphere of being the leftover scent of this rose that rested on the breast of this woman as she danced, and he's seducing her, and it's the memory and evocative. The third one is the deepest kind of loss that there is. There is this raw emotion that comes through his music and a vulnerability. What I love about it is he was a rule breaker. He never sounded like anybody before him. Nobody coming after him sounds like him. There are times that you look at the score and you think, this is crazy. And the only word to describe it is, well, it's Berlioz. And I love that this is somebody that came in with his own sound, his own vision, and he put it onto paper. It's so brave. It's so brave to go and not fall into the conventional wisdom. So the only way to really soar and fly with the music is to feel as if you're jumping out of a plane and you just trust that that parachute is going to open.
The thoughts of tonight's soloist Joyce DiDonato on singing Berlioz's Les Nuits d'été. And here she is, one of the world's most in-demand singers, Joyce DiDonato, followed on stage here at the Royal Albert Hall by one of the world's most celebrated conductors, Sir Antonio Pappano, to perform Berlioz's song cycle, Summer Nights, Les Nuits d'été.
Quand viendra la saison nouvelle, quand auront disparu les froids, tous les deux nous irons, ma belle, pour cueillir la midi au bois. Sous nos pieds égrenant les perles que l'on voit au matin trembler. Nous irons écouter les merles, nous irons écouter les merles siffler. Le printemps est venu, ma belle, c'est le mois des amants bénis. que tu puisses chasser
a performance here at the 2019 BBC Proms of Berlioz's Les Nuits d'été. Sung with such typical élan by Joyce DiDonato. She's a singer who has this wonderfully sort of luscious, rich timbre to her voice, and yet real clarity as well, such luminosity, and the words just absolutely clear as a bell even up here in the gallery. She's a singer, of course, who's celebrated as much on the operatic stage as she is for being a recyclist, and I spoke to her once about how she does that sense of incredibly operatic stillness when she sings songs, and she told me that she imagines standing still as anything but throwing out these tent pegs as she breathes that sort of tether her to the ground. And she does have this incredibly grounded sense of stillness when you watch her perform. She just draws you in. Joyce, obviously, so thrilled to be working with these young musicians here this evening, also with Antonio Pappano, who she's known for many years. In fact, she made her Proms debut here with him back in 2007. Now, a familiar face on the London music scene for many years. Sir Clive Gillinson, he was managing director of the London Symphony Orchestra for more than 2 decades. He then hopped across the pond to become executive and artistic director of Carnegie Hall. He's also the founder of tonight's orchestra. Welcome to the Proms. Lovely to have you in the orchestra back here. Just
wonderful to be back. Thank you.
Tell me, Clive, how you came to set it up. What was the primary purpose of this orchestra for you?
Let me just take a step back for 1 second, which is just to say I played in the National Youth Orchestra of Great Britain myself. It was one of the most inspiring experiences of my entire life. And so when I arrived in America, I couldn't believe that one did not exist there. And so I felt we had to create this. And the purpose really was to bring together the most brilliant young players in America, and the standards are extraordinary, as you can hear, and have them all inspire each other. Secondly, to have them then take this gift, because to be chosen for this is an unbelievable gift, take this gift and really share it around the country wherever they go back to their communities. And then finally to act as youth ambassadors for their country all around the world. So every year we go to a different part of the world on tour with the orchestra, having prepared for 2 weeks in New York. And we've been to East Asia, we've been to Britain, we've been to Russia, we've been to South America, we've been all around America itself. So every year we will continue to tour in that way, and they really act as ambassadors. And the ambassadors, the real ambassadors in some of those countries say that having them there connecting with people is more important than anything that the ambassador themselves can do.
And you have these players then, these 16 to 19-year-olds, who you fund to go on these tours, otherwise it would be prohibitively expensive. So it's incredibly democratic, but you do sort of get your pound of flesh. You expect them to pay it back into the community. Just talk me through then some of the sort of initiatives, the places that you take these young players and how they engage with the community.
Well, firstly, wherever we're taking them around the world. I mean, like when they've been now in the UK, both in Scotland with the National Youth Orchestras of Scotland, here with the National Youth Orchestra of the UK, we make sure that everywhere they go, they have an additional day, apart from performances, where they will engage with other young people in every one of those countries. And this has led to what is effectively a community of really talented, interesting, engaged people all around the world. And I think this is the world of social media enables this to happen.
I was going to say, if you put a load of 16 to 19-year-olds in a room and said, have a day off of engaging with the community, that means doing this. But is that a positive? Is social media a force for good as far as you're concerned?
It's a force for good in terms of how they all then remain connected. I mean, they all get together, they play chamber music, they talk, they do all sorts of things together. But then when they all spread off back around the world, it's a community that stays in touch. But also part of our objective is all of them going back to their communities all around America, that they should be making sure that what they learned is something that they then share locally, so that they help other young people on the ladder. So there shouldn't ever be anything competitive about this. This is all about love of music and how you contribute to the future of music.
And you've been incredibly ambitious. You've actually got not one but 3 ensembles.
We have,
So you've got one for younger kids, a jazz ensemble. How many of these players do you expect to go on to do world-class musical things? How many do you think you lose to other careers?
Well, our experience now over the 6 years, National Youth Orchestra 2, the younger one, is only 3 years old. National Youth Orchestra Jazz is 2 years old, so we've got less experience than with National Youth Orchestra. With National Youth Orchestra, it's roughly 50-50. 50% will go into music, and they're amongst the best players, but the other 50% are also amongst the very best players, but they won't go into music, and they're going off to Yale and Harvard and goodness knows what, to be doctors and mathematicians and everything else. But maybe in 20 years' time, they'll also be the funders of the National Youth Ensembles, if they're really successful.
Very smart, I like the way you think. I have just been told in my ear, by the way, that tonight's conductor, Sir Antonio Pappano, is coming up. We have managed to bag him. We're going to do a quick chat with him in a few minutes when he's had a moment to cool down. Clive, just very quickly, finally, from you, Tony Pappano is one of the greats. You again, have been very ambitious with the kinds of conductors that you want to work with. How easy is that? Because these are people who have their diaries booked up, 5 years in advance?
Well, I asked Tony several years ago to do this, and of course it's difficult, but our view is everything you do, you have to do in the best possible way. So we want the greatest conductors, the greatest soloists, Tony and Joyce tonight. And the very first tour we did, we went to the Proms, but we also went to Moscow, St. Petersburg, and the Kennedy Center. And I phoned Valery Gergiev because we thought Valery Gergiev would be the right person to start. And I phoned him and he said, I'm sorry, I've got a holiday planned at that time. I absolutely cannot do it. An hour later, he phones me back and he says, this is such an incredible project. I've moved my holiday and I'm going to do it. That's what happened.
That's a lesson. If you want things done, you just need to call Sir Clive Gilman.
Well, if only. but
Pleasure to see you, Clive. We're going to have to leave it there.
But well, thank you anyway.
Lovely to see you. Thank you so much for coming up to see us on
Great
the Proms.
Thank
you. Prommers toing and froing there in the corridors. Some will have been, no doubt, to one of our pre-prom events before tonight's concert. There are over 70 of them. They're free. They run every day. Talks, readings, workshops, participation events for all ages. If you're in the area, why not pop down? We would love to see you at one of those. Well, I am delighted now to be joined by our conductor, Sir Antonio Pappano. Thank you for coming up here in the interval, like you've got nothing else to do except think about a little, Richard Strauss or something. How is it going for these players? How are they feeling? What's the feel of the kind of atmosphere in the room for them today?
Well, there's no question that for them this is a very important gig, a very important concert. And the hall is very special and has very special qualities, acoustic, but atmosphere too. So I think they're nervous and excited, and they have this desire to do well. And
it's
now
quite
the big
tough space for them, being used to somewhere like Carnegie Hall, and then you come to the Royal Albert Hall. As you say, the sound behaves differently. You've got all the people right up close and personal with you.
It's very, very different. But that's a part of being a professional musician. And I say professional musician because I haven't treated them any differently since day one. I haven't gone in and said, okay, this is a youth orchestra, let's, little by, no, straight bang, because they're going to go out into the world. Not all of them. Some of them are not interested, believe it or not, to go into music after, they're interested in other things, but some of them will. And I think it's very important that they know how the real world works.
Tony, I have
changing
to be honest.
halls.
I was in that rehearsal. You were very real world. There was no compromise, which I loved. You weren't doing that thing, as you say, of sort of slightly patronizing young players. You were like, this is the bar, and you have to come up and meet it. But I loved the way that you talk to them. I mean, you do a lot of singing in your rehearsals, inevitably, because of your work at the Royal Opera House. But the way you evoked the stories and things like the Strauss, the way that you sung them a sense of melodic line, partly, I suppose, to help evade the nerves, that you're giving them lots of pictures to hang on to.
Well, I think, you know, images are very, very strong, and especially for a visually oriented society now. And these kids, you know, I mean, everything is the eyes. Of course, music is so much more about the ears and the inside. But if they have something to hang on to, then the ears, the heart, the stomach, the instincts, everything, I think, is wakes up, shall we say. You know.
And they've certainly got, I mean, a huge number of very evocative pictures in this Strauss Alpine Symphony that you're about to do. It's a tough old piece, that. I mean, there are a lot of very, you know, long in the tooth orchestral players who don't often get to play it. 120 people on the stage.
Oh no, it's a frightening piece of music. Very dangerous. Lots of things can happen. But it is a fantastic metaphor for life. It's a climb up the mountain and way down. But it's the obstacles one meets along the way, the beauty one sees, the poetry, and then reaching the summit, that moment where you see something. It's not about that you've conquered the mountain. It's about that there's something up there that will change your life somehow. It's a beautifully evoked by Strauss. And this is so important for the kids because they're going to go out into life.
And very briefly, I know what they've got out of it. What do you get out of doing this?
Oh, well, their energy is just incredible. But it's also the fact that I can talk to them about things that maybe with a professional orchestra I can't talk about, or at least not at the length I would like to, about poetry, about theatricality, about communication, about life, about cause and effect, about all those kinds of things. And these kids need it now. They're between 16 and 19. They're very young. And so, yeah, it's something I feel very, very passionately about, and I just want to share it with them.
Love the fact that you've taken the time to come out of your interval when you should be concentrating and focusing and drilling down into Strauss.
Oh, I am.
It's been a pleasure. Tony, thank you so much for coming up here. Thank you. Well, I snuck into rehearsals earlier with Proms friend Catherine Knight, and here's what we heard.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Royal Albert Hall. The bigness of it should not make you play in any other way than you normally play. If you try to play for the back wall, we'll get into kind of trouble.
Night is closing, sunrise is about to begin, and you have this descending scale here, shimmering sounds, long-held chords, this harmonic cluster, and out of that then you will have a sense of the beginning of a looming mountain coming into view, as you can hear.
It's a bit distracting, this. This is sunrise. Here we are.
I mean, isn't that extraordinary? It's just that breakout moment. It's wonderful.
Clarinets, I need you to stay fortissimo. Da-da-da-da. Almost obnoxiously. Okay, that kind of screaming through.
Okay, now there is an amazing moment that's about to happen. Tell us what it is.
So they're just marching off. They're going for their walk, and they hear something in the distance. It's actually some hunting horns, and there they are.
They are way up there, and they're resounding round the album.
Absolutely fabulous. These are played by the NYO. Absolutely fantastic. What a sound they're making.
But also, what a pace this walk up a mountain is going. They're not sort of sloping off gently up the mountain. They're really going for it.
They're not nibbling on Kendall Min cake here. This is the real thing.
They're going to be knackered in a minute if they set off at this pace.
We need to be able to hear the rippling of this Bach, this little rivulet, this brook. It needs to be extremely transparent.
That bass drum there, that, you know when you hear the thunder of the waterfall before you see it, that's what it is.
Do you fancy a cool dip? I mean, is that not the most inviting sound? It's just so refreshing and beautiful.
Bouncing off the water, the droplets of
It's
spray.
fabulous.
It's magical. It's the apparition, this moment here. You can see rainbows.
Okay, tell me about this apparition, because this is a weird moment.
Well, I think it's all about the light. You can hear the light, can't you? And it's bouncing off. What are you seeing? We all see things, don't we, when the light bounces off the water? For some, it might even be a unicorn.
Molto crescendo.
I mean, that's Tom and Jerry, isn't it?
So this is what they're skidding around.
Yeah, so they've got the ice, and I think they're just getting close to the top, but it's still, you can hear this cello. Are we going to make it? I don't know.
See that heroic theme? Oh yeah, they're gonna be okay, and there's the view.
I think it's all going to be all right.
Here they are. They've arrived.
I love this moment because just a moment when you'd think you'd have this massive theme because they've reached the summit. There's a moment of, oh wow, how small am I versus nature.
Sort of that thing that you get when you have climbed a mountain where you just look at the view and you're totally awestruck.
Yeah.
The plucking of the strings, obviously the raindrops coming, the wind machine going, it's terrifying.
Also, the rain has changed from coming at you that way to coming at you that way.
And in all directions, the organ going, and this is, I mean, he's fearful for his life here. Are they going to get down this mountain in time before nightfall?
And here to conduct them in Richard Strauss's monumental Alpine Symphony, it's tonight's conductor, Sir Antonio Pappano. What a piece to close a prom with. Richard Strauss's epic tone poem, such a huge ask of any orchestra, performed with such blistering intensity, focus, dedication to storytelling, and evident pleasure by the players of the National Youth Orchestra of the USA. Acknowledging the applause of those seated behind them in the choir stalls, as well as a rapt audience in front of them and all around here at the Royal Albert Hall. Those players, conducted by Sir Antonio Pappano, takes a well-earned drink there. And their numbers enhanced by extra brass players from the National Youth Orchestra of Great Britain. Well, what a showcase for any orchestra. 120 students on stage here at the Royal Albert Hall for a performance that no doubt they will never forget. As Tony Pappano said earlier, many people don't often get to play this piece, but to play it as you're starting out on that career to being a musician, what an opportunity for these young performers. What a gorgeous choice of encore there. Music by Richard Strauss's great friend, Edward Elgar. Nimrod from his Enigma Variations. Performed here at the Proms by the National Youth Orchestra of the USA, conducted by Sir Antonio Papano. Well, that's just about it from us for tonight. Tomorrow, do switch on BBC Radio 3, 7:30, when you'll hear the London Philharmonic Orchestra with an all-Russian affair. Every piece on the bill given its world or UK premiere by the Proms founder, Sir Henry Wood. Also tomorrow, you can tune in to Proms Encore. It's on BBC 2, 7 o'clock, from all of us here at the Royal Albert Hall. Good night.